Last week we learned that something that I thought was dead is actually still very much so being talked about within the MCU, and that is the Blade project starring Mahershala Ali. He is now in his 50s. I don't know how much longer he could play this role, so it's kind of silly that we keep talking about it, and a lot of people are like, oh, 50, he's still young enough to play it. Like, yeah, he's young enough to play it now, but this is a role that they're going to want to have in the MCU for the next 15 years, and I don't expect him to be 65 still playing Blade. So, that being said, do I think he's going to be our Blade moving forward? I hope not. If this was 5 years ago when they announced it, I would have said, I hope so, because I love Mahershala Ali and he is fantastic, but I don't want a 65-year-old Blade running around with the Avengers. I want someone young and in their prime and able to kind of like mess shit up, and it pains me to say that because, again, I love Mahershala Ali, but it just seems like he's kind of aged out at this point. By the time they start production, he's going to be in his mid-50s. It just doesn't make sense. That's not the topic I'm here to talk about. The topic I'm here to talk about is this movie has been in development hell. It has been an absolute carousel of a nightmare with multiple directors attaching themselves to the projects and then backing out when they couldn't figure it out. Multiple script writers. This has been passed around more than a doorknob of a public bathroom. It's wild how this movie is such a colossal embarrassment. This goes to show you why you shouldn't announce films before you have a script. When Kevin Feige got up on stage saying Mahershala Ali is going to be our Blade, they had no script ready to present to anybody, and that was their biggest mistake, because then everyone waited in the wings for announcements and updates about the film coming out, and it just kept losing directors, kept losing writers, kept losing time frames and release dates, and it's just become a nightmare. The most recent announcement was that Karajoy Fukunaga, I believe is his name. I probably butchered that. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with names. He's the person that did the first season of True Detective and directed the last James Bond film, No Time to Die. He was attached to the project for a while, but they kept it out of the headlines for a long time until he dropped out. What else is new? It was revealed that he was trying to figure it out and he couldn't really do it. But on the flip side of that, a lot of people say that he's a difficult person to work with. So having somebody that's very stern-headed and wants their artistic freedom inside of a studio project doesn't always work, because Kevin Feige's not going to let him just do whatever he wants. So it kind of made sense that he backed out. But then this new name that's attached to the project might be, in my opinion, the best name yet. And I'm going to explain why after saying who it is. If you haven't heard yet, apparently Chad Stahelski is going to direct the Blade film, who did the first 4 John Wick films. And before that, he was known as being Keanu Reeves' stunt double in the Matrix films. He was originally a stunt performer, known for doing choreography and fight scenes, who went off to become a director and made one of the greatest modern-day action films of all time in John Wick, which has spawned, like I said, 3 other sequels, having 4 in its entirety. We're getting the Ballerina spinoff. Now he's doing a Highlander movie with Henry Cavill, which is insane. I am so hyped for that film. It's out of control just how rabid I am to watch that. I love the Highlander movie. I love Henry Cavill. He's still my Superman. And John Wick, to me, is the peak of what action B-level movies could be. So you take him and you put it in a Blade, and right there it's instantly exciting. But that's not the thing that excites me the most. The thing that excites me the most is that Chad Stahelski loves Blade. Years ago, before this was ever even a thing, before he ever even got close to attaching himself to a Blade project, someone asked him on an interview, if you were ever going to direct a superhero movie, what would it be? And he said, Blade. I don't like that many superheroes, but I love Blade. I read all the Blade comics. I love the Wesley Snipes films. I grew up watching those stunts in those movies, and he's a big Blade fan. And the reason why that's awesome is because in Hollywood, 9 times out of 10, most people that get hired to do a job are hired to do a job. Most directors of superhero films are not die-hard fans of the superhero that they're directing. Sure, you get stuff like Christopher Nolan coming in to make a Batman film, who is not a comic book fan and is not a Batman fan, but thought he had a good idea for an interpretation for Batman that he saw fit to bring out into the world, and he was right because everyone loved it. But again, he's not a diehard Batman fan. So you're probably saying, so then what does it matter? Christopher Nolan's the greatest director of all time. So he could literally make a movie about a steaming pile of shit on the floor and make me cry at the end. Same thing with Steven Spielberg. They just have that in them. Some directors can just come in having no idea about the source material and fill themselves with people to make the best possible product. Think of J.C. Shandor from Andor. That guy does not like Star Wars. He doesn't hate it, but he's not like a giant fan of it or anything like that. Oh, I'm sorry, not J.C. Shandor, Tony Gilroy. He's not a die-hard fan of Star Wars by any means. He's not a fan of the movies. He hasn't read the comics. He hasn't read the books, but he saw this as an opportunity to tell a story about oppression and rising up and sticking it to the man. And instead of having it watched by 1 million people in this independent film, he was like, I'm gonna wrap it in a Star Wars wrapping paper and have billions of people show up to watch my story. And it worked because he surrounded himself with people that knew about Star Wars, that were able to inject Star Wars lore and mythos into the project to make it feel like Star Wars, whereas he was really just trying to tell this story about a rebellion rising up against people that were oppressing them. And you have a lot of directors like that again aren't super big fans of the source material, but surround themselves with people that do know about it, so you can have that Star Wars-like feeling in the show. You have someone like Todd Phillips, who made the first Joker. I won't talk about the second one because it was an absolute steaming pile of manure. But the first one, he said in interviews, I'm not a comic book fan. I don't really like Batman and the Joker. I just wanted to make a movie, a drama, a thriller about a mentally disturbed man that gets pushed too far to the point where he snaps after getting bullied by society, the same society that's supposed to protect him, and he goes on a killing rampage. But he knew that if he just made that movie, on one hand, people would be comparing it to the King of Comedy that Martin Scorsese did with Robert De Niro, but on the second hand, not many people are probably going to see it. It probably would have made like $20 million at the box office. But when you call it the Joker and you put face paint on it, suddenly it's $1 billion film, and he knew that, and he wanted to tell this story, so he wrapped it in a superhero wrapping paper, even though he didn't care all that much about the Joker himself or the DCU as a whole, and he made a good movie, because again, he's a good storyteller. But that doesn't always play out. It doesn't always happen like that. A lot of the times you get people that are just hired to come in and make a movie about a superhero, and they don't care about the superhero, they're just doing it for the paycheck, so they're not injecting their heart into it and all the things they know about the character into it, and they try and reinvent the wheel and make it their own interpretation, and it feels so detached from what the source material is, what the comic book version of that character is, that people don't like it. Sure, Taika Waititi made Thor Ragnarok, which was fucking unbelievable. The best Thor movie and one of the best MCU movies, but he made it during a time where Marvel was following a story arc, and Taika Waititi was under strict magnification glasses from Kevin Feige of what he could and could not do. So he was able to kind of come in, take this script that someone helped him write that was very familiar with the MCU and where the story was at as a whole, and he made a movie that had a Taika Waititi flair to it, but was still very much at its core an MCU film, and it was fantastic. But then you take Kevin Feige out of the equation because Bob Chapek was mandating that 4 million and 1 movies get made in 3 days for Disney Plus, and stretched Kevin Feige too thin where he's not paying attention to Taika Waititi, and Taika Waititi goes off and makes Thor Love and Thunder, which is a steaming pile of shit. I don't like that movie. When I first saw it, I didn't hate it, but the more I watch it, the more I'm like, they really butchered my boy. And it was so not received well that after the fact, in an interview, Taika Waititi straight up said, I don't even like this stuff. I just did it for a paycheck. And that's what you get more often than not when not either under guidance from a creative person that knows the source material or somebody that just genuinely loves the source material themselves. Chad Stahelski loves Blade. He loves the character. So not only is he coming in giving me the sense that we're going to get some of the greatest swordplay against vampires that we've ever seen ever, but he also loves the character from a fan aspect. And when that happens, when you get a good director coming in that genuinely loves the project, it injects it with this magic and this heart that you don't normally get otherwise. He's never made a bad movie. Blade is an undeniable popular character whom he loves. It could literally just be a movie like The Raid, where it's essentially Blade in a building just fighting his way to the top, but under Chad Stahelski's direction and choreography, it's gonna be the most fucking badass Blade movie that you could imagine. And I hope to God that they land him as the director, because on one hand, this would be amazing. Give this man all the money to bring this to life, but on the other hand, if you look at his IMDb, the guy has like 10 projects lined up to make. He has a Rainbow Six movie, he has another John Wick movie, he just finished Ballerina, he has The Highlander. I don't see how he's going to be able to do Blade, so this, although it's been in a lot of headlines, I'm going to kind of put in the category of rumor. I'm sure they probably did talk to him about it, but I don't know if he confirmed anything, but I could only hope with all of my being that he says yes and convinces Marvel to pay all the other studios he agreed to make movies for a couple $1 million to delay those films so he could make a Blade film right now. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you a big fan of Chad Stahelski? Are you excited to see him do a Blade film? And do you hope he, in fact, eventually does it? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time.